Hello and welcome back to Youth Code Jam's online Bits and Bytes lessons. We are still in a code adventure series and we are still working with MakeCode Arcade. Today's activity is called Drive Time. We're going to program a car to collect coins while also dodging obstacles on a road. It is going to be a bit of a lengthy program, so you might want to take a break and pause halfway through. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. That's why this is recorded and you have the activity sheet. This activity is going to work best on a desktop, laptop, or Chromebook computer. You will be able to use it on a tablet or a phone. We really don't recommend using it on a phone because the screen is too small. That starts to get really frustrating for a lot of students. It would be frustrating for a lot of adults, especially for the amount of code blocks we're going to be working with. We just don't recommend that. However, it should work fine on tablet devices. What you have to do to change values might look a little different than it will on my screen, but I'll try to give you notes on how to change that. For the record, I've only used it with an iPad. I don't have a Windows or Android tablet device, so if that interface is a little different, I don't think it should be, but you'll hear how it works on an iPad at the very least. The last thing is we are recommending that this activity is best for probably 5 through 8. Younger students are welcome to try it out. They're just going to have patience with it. It is a bit long. K through 2 students can also give it a try. Honestly, this might be a little bit too much for them. If they do, we recommend trying it out with parents, so maybe making it a family activity for the day. This activity would also be fine for high school students. Our live lessons just tend to skew more towards the elementary school age and 6th grade age. So that's why we have those ages on this activity. Other than that, let's go ahead and get started. So that's for our live stuff. You don't need to worry about that. So the first thing we're going to do is open a new tab and go to arcade.makecode.com. You can see it auto-filling in my browser. So we're going to go ahead and go there. And you can see I have a lot of projects. I haven't actually saved these in an account. I haven't erased my cookies in my browser, so they just automatically save. If I clear out those cookies, these would all disappear. So if you've worked in here before, you might see some of your old projects. But we're not going to work with those. We're going to create a new one. So you're going to hit this big orange square that says New Project. Either click it with your mouse or trackpad or tap it with your finger. And then you're just going to use, we're just going to give it a name. So for this project, we're going to name it Drive Time, or at least I am. You guys can name it what you want. And we're going to go ahead and press Create. And so this is the workspace. I'm going to let it explain it while it loads. So we're going to be using the blocks. If you know it or are comfortable with trying it out, you can also switch to a JavaScript view and code the program using JavaScript, which is text code. But for this exercise, you're just going to see the block view. So this is the workspace where we have the OnStart block, which is where we'll put everything, all of our setups, our character creation, our background, everything like that will go in the OnStart block so that it exists when we start the program and is ready to go. Right next door to the left here, these are our drawers, and there's a lot here. There's more that are advanced ones down here. We're going to stick with these basic ones for this activity. And then on the far left, this is our game simulator, so we'll be able to play the game on here. There are tools that you can have, physical tech tools that you can download the program to and play with them from there. We don't have any of those. We don't expect the students to have any of those, so we're just going to use the game simulator to try out our games. And I think that's about all you need to worry about. Down here in this bottom corner, it looks like we have an undo and a redo button, and then a zoom out and a zoom in button. So if you need more space. If you have a GitHub account, it looks like you can save your game to the GitHub repository. And then again, here's where we named our file. So you can always come down here and rename it and press save. So that's the basic setup. Like I said, you'll have an activity sheet once you're watching this online, or if you've come to the classes, an activity sheet was emailed to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to squish my browser down just a little and come over here to to my browser. So I have the activity sheet pulled up here in the PDF. That's because I'm not going to print this out. I'm going to use this activity one time. That's for today. I'm not going to waste paper and ink on it. That's not a good choice in my opinion. If that's how you work best, you can do that. If you have the ability, you can also send this to a phone or an iPad or another device and view it on there if you can't do the split screen view. And what that is that when you split screen, you can have two, that's when you have at least two windows open. So I have my browser and I have my PDF, and they kind of overlap, but it's enough that I can see, I can use the PDF as a guide, and then I can switch back and do the work here. So that's typically how we work and how we try and show students to work, so that they're not having to print things, but also so that they get used to switching back and forth between browsers, because that's just what's going to happen as they get older, is that they're going to have to work with multiple browsers or windows or programs up at the same time. So that's why you see it like this and we don't pull it off the screen normally. So we already have our setup there. We're going to go ahead and start with step 1. And the first thing we're going to do is set our background image. So we're actually going to draw this, and there's a couple ways that you're going to be able to do it. But we're going to go ahead and place an onstart block, place a gray. Okay, so we are going to use the paint editor for this. So to get our background block, you're going to go to the scene drawer with the tree next to it. We're going to get this block that says set background image to. We're just going to drag it and drop it into the OnStart block. So this is going to set up the background for our game. Right now it's a black screen. We're going to add some, we're going to add a sky and ground to this. So we're just going to go ahead and build in this editor here. This is called the paint editor. So the first thing I want you to do is come up to this corner and choose the biggest square so that you can actually see the square on your screen. And you can make it whatever you want. I'm going to follow the example. I'm going to stick with that green and do the grass first. So about a third of my page down, I'm going to draw this. Now I'm holding down my left key or the left side of my chalkboard and drawing this so that it just draws it in one big line. But you can see that's not really smooth. So there's actually kind of a faster way to do this. If you don't want to draw it with the pencil, you can come down here to the rectangle. And I'm going to come about here to make sure I cover that. And I'm going to draw this rectangle. And while I can't fill it in, I can just draw a bunch of rectangles inside it to cover up all those, the gaps. So I'm just drawing a bunch of rectangles. It's not the fastest, but it's faster than using the pencil to draw. And we're all about doing things faster and saving time. So again, you can see I'm not putting it, but you can't tell that it's a bunch of rectangles, and it's not going to matter after. It's not going to matter later. So we just have one little thing left. Okay, that looks good enough. So the next thing we're going to do is draw our sky. Actually, I have to fix this corner. I apologize if you can hear my neighbor's dog barking in the background. There's nothing I can do about it. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is change my color to this light blue. It says color 9 in that pop-up. And then I'm just going to do the same thing again with the rectangles, because that was pretty fast and everything came out in a nice straight line. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that. But I've shown you 2 ways to go ahead and approach this. This one's a little neater because I don't have to clean up mistakes from the first one. So yeah, so this might take you a few minutes, that's okay. I'm trying to go fast so that this video isn't super long. I will try to explain things as best I can, but I may go a little fast in some places, and I apologize in advance. Alright, this should be the last one. Ta-da! Alright, so once you have your scene drawn, go ahead and press done. And now we're going to move on to step 2. So in step 2, we're going to build our road, and we're going to use a tile map for that. And what a tile map is it's something that's already, it's basically a small part of a picture that's already in existence, and we can use the tile board of our screen to draw it on. So we're going to come back to our workspace and go back to scene. And this time you're going to go to Tiles and then get Set Tile Map 2 and place it under our set background. And once again, just go ahead and click this gray square. And we're going to do some stuff first. We're going to come down to the bottom left corner here and change this first 16 to a 10 and this second one to an 8 because we don't need that giant workspace. So we've done that. The next thing we're going to do, whoops, hold on, I zoomed in really far. Okay, so I used that zoom out sign right there in the bottom. So the next thing we're going to do is pick our tile block, and we're going to do this by changing forest to miscellaneous and then going to the third page. So this is page 1 of the miscellaneous tiles. We're going to go to the third page and click the horizontal road icon. And so it's doing something funny there. Let's switch it for a second. Okay, it did this to me the other day and I really couldn't figure out why. So I'm going to press done for a second and then re-enter the editor. So again, change forest to miscellaneous, choose the road, and now it gave me 1. So if it did that funny thing to you guys, where you had like 3 roads stacked on top of each other, just go ahead and exit out of the editor, press done, and then go back into it. I think it's just a glitch, but I'm not really sure. But you can see we're doing 2 rows here, I believe. I'll switch back in a second. But we're doing 2 rows, I think. Yeah, 2 rows on top of each other. And then on step 3, we're going to switch off of this road tile here. And we're going to go to this wall. So that's going to prevent anything. What the wall does is we're going to draw it along this line, this bottom row. And that's going to prevent anything from going into that space. It's kind of going to make it, basically, it's turning it into a wall. You can't go on the wall, you can't go past the wall. So we're going to take that red square and just hold down the left cursor or hold down your finger and drag it all the way across. And you're not going to see a physical change from this other than that's now highlighted red. So that's all that's going to happen. We're going to go ahead and press done. And you can see on our screen it's updating. You can now see the road and you can see our grass, and our sky. So we have our scene set. So now we can move on to creating our player character. And like I said, since we're on a road, we're going to go ahead and use a car, but you will have some options. So you're going to go to the sprite drawer. It's the top drawer. It has a paper airplane, or what I think is a paper airplane next to it. And you're going to grab this first block under create, set my sprite to sprite blank of kind player. So we're going to grab that and put it inside our onStart block. And I can see from the instructions that we're going to rename my sprite to car. So you're just going to click on this drop down button and then choose rename variable, and you can rename it car and press OK. The next thing you're going to do is choose your sprite. So come click on this empty gray box. Now you can draw your own car if you want to. We're going to use a pre-built one from the gallery, and that's all the way down here. So keep scrolling, and you have 3 options. So you want the car that's facing right. So you can have this red right car, you can have a blue right car, or you can have, let's see, this one says it's a pink right car, but it also kind of looks that one. So the example uses red, but you can use the red one, the blue one, or this pink one. I'm going to use blue. I like blue. So once I've selected my car that faces right, I'm going to choose done, and my car is set up. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to create the coin, and the coin is going to be, it's going to be kind of funny. It's going to be a food sprite because it's something we're collecting, but the coin, as we know, is not really food. So you're just going to repeat that whole process we just did. So go to the sprites drawer, get this set my sprite to. We're going to rename this variable to coin. So you want your variable names to match the object or whatever they represent. So in this case, our coin is representing a coin and the car is representing a car. My sprite and my sprite 2 are very general and vague and don't tell you what that variable actually is. So you want pretty descriptive names if you have the opportunity to. So again, just click in that gray square, go to the gallery, and the coin looks kind of funny in the gallery, if you ask me. It's kind of this this yellow circle. You can choose any of these you want. I'm just going to choose the first one. Press done. And then, like I said before, we're changing it from a player to a food because we're going to collect that one. Alright, so the last step on page 2 is step 6, and we're going to give our car a position. So we're going to place it in the on top of that road, that first row of the road. We're going to place it there and put it on column 1, so towards the left on the top of that road. And we're going to use a place block from the scene drawer. So go back to the drawer with the tree and look for a place block. So we're looking for this one, place my sprite on top of tile map column 0, row 0. So we're going to grab that and just drop it underneath our create blocks. So you'll notice here it updated and it gave me an error. It says you don't have a sprite named my sprite. That means I need to change it to match one of these sprite names. And since we're placing the car, I need it to match the car name. So you'll watch that and it'll update. And so that error is gone. So it's very important that when you have a variable name, it matches one that exists and it matches the one you want to work with at that time. So the first thing we're going to do is change the column from 0 to 1, and then the row from 0 to 6. So if you noticed on my screen over here, every time I make a change, this updates. It kind of grays out and then goes. So now you can see that my car is in column 1 and on row 6, which is that road. My coin is still hovering there in the middle. That's okay. Right, so on to page 3, step 7. We're going to give our car a acceleration speed. So we're going to at some point have our car jump up to catch the coin and to also avoid an oncoming obstacle. So we need it to have a speed that so it goes up and down at a certain pace. So we're going to go to the sprites drawer and we're going to get a set. It starts with set my sprite x to 0. We're going to change a lot here. So we're going to drop that there. Obviously, the first thing here, we need to change my sprite to car. And then the second thing we're going to do is use this drop down to change X to AY acceleration. So that's saying how fast it goes up or down. And then we're going to change the 0 to 200. If you're using an iPad, you might have sliders sometimes for some of these number values. You can go ahead and use those, or you can use your pop-up keyboard to type it in, whatever you want to do. Sometimes the sliders are easier, sometimes they're not. It just depends on you. So the next thing we're going to do is set the control function for our car. So we're going to use the A button to move the car. And there's going to be some conditions inside of it, as you can see. So if you're following along with the activity sheet, we're going to move on to step 8. So the first thing we'll do for this part is go to the controller and get this on a pressed block. And just drop it underneath the on start block. And then the next thing you're going to do is go to the logic drawer, and we're going to get this if then block, and it has true in the middle. We're not going to worry about that true. So what happens here is we're checking to see if we are going to check to see if something is true here. So if you can see in step 9, we're going to see if the car is hitting the wall, which means is the car hitting this bottom layer that we made a wall? If it is, then we're going to make a decision based on that. So here it looks like we're going to change the velocity of our car, so how fast the car is going. Is what we're going to change the speed of the car. So first we need to go to the scene drawer and we need to look for is my sprite hitting wall bottom. So we might have to scroll a bit. It's here under collisions. Is my sprite hitting wall left? So we're going to drag that to our workspace. And if you notice, I now have a red circle and a yellow line around the block I just got in that true block. That's telling you that you can drop it in here. That means if you release your finger from your screen or your mouse or your trackpad, it's going to drop in there. So I'm going to release it, and there it goes. And then I'm going to change my sprite to car and left to bottom because our wall is on the bottom. It's not on the left side of the screen. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the velocity and we're going to decrease it from 0 to negative 125. So that's back here in the Change Sprites drawer, and we're going to go to Change My Sprite X. And just like we changed the acceleration, we're going to use the drop down to change this to car. Use the drop down to change X to VY velocity for Y. And we're going to change 0 to negative 125, negative 125. If you don't know where the negative key in is, it's the key right next to the 0 on the left side of the 0. It has a dash at the top and a dash at the bottom. That's going to be your negative key. Go ahead and hit that before you type in the rest of your numbers. Right, so if you want to take a break for a few minutes, we're about halfway through. It's a good time to pause. So you can see I'm now on page 4 of 6. That's halfway. If not, let's just keep going. So the next thing we're going to do is have our game update. So this is going to be responsible for updating the game and moving the coin through, and also moving our obstacle, which we still have to create. So we're going to go to the game drawer, which is this purple one, third from the top. It just has a little circle next to it. And we're going to get this on game update every 500 milliseconds and drag it into our workspace underneath our on a press block. And we're going to change 500 to 1750. And you'll notice when we hit that drop down, 1750 isn't an option. That's okay. You're just going to type it in. So I've highlighted 500, and now I'm going to type 1750, and then click into the dead space of my work area, and we're good to go. The next thing we're going to do is position our coin. So every time the game updates, we're going to position our coin in the same spot. So if you remember, that's in our scene drawer, and it's under the tile section. So this time, instead of changing my sprite to car, we're changing my sprite to coin. And our tile map is going to change from 0 to 9 for the column. And our row is going to change from 0 to 4. So we moved it to the right. So what's going to happen, if you look at my screen, the coin is going to move from right to left. And we're going to program all of that next. So step 13 is we're going to set the coin's velocity, and we're going to use a random number for that. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our sprites drawer and get that set my sprite X to 0 block and make all the changes. So my sprite becomes coin, X becomes VY, it becomes VX, velocity of X. And we're going to use a random number for that, so go to math and get the pick random 0 to 10 block and drop it in where that 0 is. And we're going to change the 0 of the pick block to negative 120, and the 10 is going to change to negative 80. So it will pick a random speed between those two values to go. And it's negative so that it flows to the left of the screen. Same with our velocity. It's negative so it goes down or up. I'm not sure. It's funny on this one. But it's negative so that it goes from right to left. The next thing we're going to do in step 13 is get a couple effects. So we're going to set the coin to ghost. And that's what's going to happen when it's off screen, and then we're going to set it to invisible. So when the switch is off or the coin is off screen, it's going to have some effects added to it. So go to the sprites drawer, and we're going to scroll down to the set my sprite stay in screen option. We're going to grab 2 of those. So I'm going to drop 1, then I'm going to go back and get a second. This is from the effects part of that drawer. And on both of them, I'm going to change my sprite to coin. And on this first one, we're going to switch stay in screen to ghost. And then stay in screen on the second to invisible. We're going to leave them set to off. So that's going to control a good part of our coin's behavior. So you can see it kind of stops and then it jumps back. But we don't see it jump back, it just appears there. So that's what those 2 are doing for us. Alright, and then step 15, we're going to go get an overlaps block from the sprite drawer. So you're going to look for the overlaps overlap label here. And here's overlaps. It's this first block. We're going to drop it into our space. And the only thing we're going to change is I need to make my screen a little bigger. This second player, we're going to change it to food. So we're going to have when our player sprite overlaps our food sprite, we're going to have some stuff happen. Okay, so the first things we're going to do is we're going to change ghost to on and invisible to on when our sprites overlap. So that's step 16. So the easiest way to do that, instead of going back to the drawer and looking for it, is to just copy to make a duplicate. So if you're using a mouse or a trackpad, you're going to right click on our set coin ghost off block and hit duplicate, and then drag it inside our overlaps block and change off to on. And that's it. If you're using an iPad or a tablet, you're going to hold down with your finger for a few seconds, and then the duplicate window will pop up. If you can't get it, if it's having a hard time sensing your finger, go ahead and just go back to the sprites drawer and find those blocks. And if you're not sure where that is, go back and review where we got them from the block above. And then you'll drag that block in and change off to on. And then the next thing we're going to do is change our score by 1. So you're going to go to the info drawer and get a change score by 1 block. Alright, step 18. Guys, we're on page 5 of 6, and 5 is the last one with steps, so you're almost done. Okay, so we're going to get another update game every 2,000 milliseconds block. So we're going to get another update game block, and this one's going to control our obstacle. So we're going to actually make our obstacle in a second. So get another on-game update block, and we're going to change 500 to 2,000. And just like last time, 2000 isn't a variable that exists, so we're going to type it in. So 2 followed by 3 zeros, 2000. And the very first block we're going to create is we're going to create our obstacle. And we get to draw this one ourselves. And how you draw this is up to you, but we're going to use basically a construction cone. So we're going to go to sprites and get create. Hold on. Oops, that's the wrong block. So we're going to go to sprites and we're going to scroll down to, I think it's going to be under projectiles. Yep, set projectile to the from side. Okay, so we're going to get this set projectile to projectile blank from side with VX and VY. So we're going to get that block and place it inside our update block. And the first thing we're going to do is rename projectile to cone. The second thing we're going to do is draw our cone. So you're just going to use this editor again. I'm just going to draw something really simple here. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. So I'm just switching between white and orange to make it look kind of like a traffic cone. You guys can draw this however you want. It might take me a few minutes. This is not going to be fast. It's also not going to be pretty. But remember, these things are really small. So if it's not perfect, it's okay. So I think that's going to be high enough. It's kind of a squat traffic cone, but it looks like a triangle. Right? So it's close enough shape-wise. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to hit done. And then the next thing I'm going to do is before I go get that random block, I'm going to change VY to 0. So right now it's at 50. We're going to change that to 0. And like I said, you can use this slider. So that means it's moving 0 pixels per second. Pixels is the measurement of the screen. They're really, really small. And now we're going to go to the math drawer and get that pick random block. And change 0 to -120 and 10 to -80. So just like we have for the coin, that's the speed we're going for the projectile, our cone. Okay, so now we can code the collision. This is the last thing we're going to do. You're going to get another overlap block from the sprites drawer. So that's way down here. And this time, instead of changing the second player to food, we're going to change it to projectile. So if you haven't heard that word before, a projectile is something that is shot at you or comes at you. Oh, I missed a step. So back on step 20, we need to place our cone. If you guys notice, our cone is flying way at the top. So go to the scene drawer and get a place my sprite on top of column 0, row 0. Change my sprite to cone. Change the column to 9 and the row to 6. And now it should be on the same level as our car. Yep, it just flew right over the car. Okay, so now back on step 21. Okay guys, there are some typos in here. I'm going to go back and fix these. So on step 21, we have this sprite. We went and got the overlaps block, and we have the player, and then we changed player in the last part to projectile because we're going to code what happens when the car hits the cone. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is go to the game drawer, and we're just going to get this game over block. So go to the game drawer and get game over, and it's going to update. So you can see I hit A and it went up, and when I landed on the cone, or if I hit the cone at all, then I lose the game. So I only got 2 points before I lost. So that is it for our activity sheet. That was a long one. I appreciate you staying with us on that one. This next part is just to try out your game, and then we have some adventure modes. So can you add more ways to move? Right now we can only jump up, so can you add a way to move forward or backward? Can you add a score limit to win the game? Right now you can only end the game if you lose, so is there a way you could add it so that you win? Hint, you would use an if statement and a comparison operator. And then the last one is add more obstacles or food items that will either give you points or take away points. So maybe instead of dying when you hit the obstacle, you lose a point or 2 points. And then if you catch certain food items or other things, you can get more points. So those are just some ideas for you. You should be able to do them with everything that we've learned today. And good luck, and I hope to see you guys at some of our live meetings too.